Hi guys and welcome back to the Park End podcast. It is episode number 6. We're joined by another very, very special guest today. We're joined by Gortz, otherwise known as Gregory. I'm sure you'll notice him from the channel if you watch the Mighty Blues on YouTube. Gortz has been on the channel on a number of occasions talking about Everton Football Club, talking about his hometown club of Minnesota United. He's also always involved in the live comments as well, so if you watch any of our live streams you'll be aware of Gortz getting involved in the live comments and getting involved in the chat. We're going to sit down today and talk about Gortz's Everton story, how he became an Evertonian, obviously living all the way over in the States. We're going to talk about his experience of coming to Goodison Park and watching Everton Football Club. Actually, one of the last games in which we could all attend Goodison Park in full capacity in January last year. We're going to talk about his favourite Everton memory, his life as an Evertonian over in the United States as well. I want to say before we get into any of that, big thanks for all of the support on the recent podcasts. Obviously, we had the episode with Steve out last week and it absolutely smashed it. Got a load of really, really nice feedback. So I want to say I really, really do appreciate all of that support. If you're watching on YouTube, please do leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you've got any questions for Gortz, leave them in the comment section down below as well. I'm sure you'll be floating about there ready to answer. And if you're listening on Spotify, iTunes or any other podcasting platform, please do give us a rating, and that would be greatly appreciated, that it goes towards showing that, you know, we're doing something well over here on the Park End podcast. So anyway, before we get into any of the little bits and bobs about today's podcast, mate, how you doing? How's things obviously over in the States at the moment?
You know, I'm good. I'm getting through the, can't wait for, things to go back to normal and get back into even go out and be with people.
Yeah.
Just even, let alone being back at watching the beautiful game.
Yeah. Definitely, and I don't know whether it's the same in the United States. I haven't really been keeping up with things over there, but for us, certainly over in England and in Liverpool specifically, it does seem like there's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel now. It's still got a couple of months to go before things start to really return to some form of normality, but there's definitely a hope. Certainly by this time next season, next year, we'll be able to be at Goodison Park in a full capacity, and we'll talk about the stadium and Bramley-Moore Docks a little bit later on in the podcast. And now we haven't got much longer left at Goodison Park before we do move into the new stadium, but hopefully for all of us, like you said, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not just about returning to football now. It's literally the small things like getting to see your family and being able to go to the shops. For us over here, being able to eat at restaurants, which we haven't been able to do for 2 or 3 months or so. So it's difficult times. It is. I completely agree. But hopefully we'll be able to return and we'll be able to watch the Blues in person once again very, very soon. So talk to us about how you became an Evertonian and how you got into football, really, because obviously I know, football or soccer, as you call it in the United States, isn't the biggest sport over there. I understand there's a lot of football fans over there. I understand there's a lot of American Toffees. There's a lot of American fans that support various different football clubs, but it isn't the biggest sport. It's certainly not the main sport that's supported over in the United States. So what drew you to football, and specifically what drew you to Everton Football Club?
It was basically pretty much how I got into football was basically my family had a 2-week family vacation to Belgium during the 2014 World Cup. And so like over there it was like, kind of the start of the golden generation, so to say, of Belgium with, Hazard when he was fit, De Bruyne, Lukaku, those guys. And I remember watching the one with, I think it was the 2-2 draw against Algeria. And I think my family, we didn't know the names of the players, but we nicknamed Fellaini Afro Dude because of his big enormous afro, but I think now he cut it, so it's like I have to point it out to my parents if he's playing. I'm like, yeah, that guy, remember? Yeah, that's Afro Dude, but he cut it off, and so basically so because I was, in Belgium, I was, and all the fans were, the big people, players were at, Hazard and Courtois. I kind of, I first kind of, um, first supported, Chelsea, and actually I saw one of like the preseason at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, where the Minnesota Vikings, the American football team, play. Funny enough, that was the first event held there. So it was like the first event held at a stadium where they played American football was a football soccer match. That was Chelsea versus AC Milan, and if I don't believe so, I think that was the first minutes that saw N'Golo Kante as a Chelsea player, if I remember correctly, and then after a while, I'm like, I didn't feel like a personal connection to the club, so I kind of and then I got into watching Spencer FC, and kind of became a West Ham fan for a bit, and with that, and kind of didn't feel a personal connection, or a draw to the club that really. And then hate to say this, but there was a season where I supported the other lot, but there I'm like, I didn't feel a connection. And then I ended up becoming a beta tester for a mobile football game called the Ultimate Fan Live. Kind of, I think it used to be big, and now they don't have. I don't think it's around anymore. But I stuck a friendship with kind of another beta tester who's a season ticket holder with his mom. And so basically, I think I told him that he was local soccer club was Minnesota United, and he's like, oh really? And he's like, oh, who's the manager? And I told him Adrian Heath, and he's like, really? Like, you don't like? Yeah, that's your manager. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, he's in Everton. He's part of the glory years. One of at one time was their Everton record transfer signing, and so kind of started supporting them near the end of Koeman's reign, which we all know how Koeman did and didn't. And then it's kind of like Alan Ball said it. Once Everton has touched you, nothing will be the same.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what happened, and I think that's just wholesome footballing story as well, because obviously you fell in love with the sport when you were over in Belgium and you were watching the World Cup, and so fantastic as well. By the way, I know there's a lot of football fans out there that would love to watch a World Cup. I'm not big on international, and certainly not the international break in terms of the current international break and friendlies and stuff, but I think it'd be such an experience, even if it wasn't watching England, just to watch a World Cup game and to see the atmosphere and to be around that. I think that would be an unbelievable experience. So it's heartwarming to hear that you fell in love with the sport of football, and how it was played and the various different players, and then it was the process of finding a team, and like you said, it very much is. Once Everton has touched you, nothing will be the same. And throughout those years, if you're looking for a club to support and trying to find affiliations with various different clubs, it was Everton that sort of come to you really through the medium, obviously, of the friend that you met, and he said, Adrian Heath, and Adrian Heath is a big Everton legend, massive part of that team in the 80s, clinical goal scorer, absolutely fantastic player. What I'd give to have an Adrian Heath in this Everton team now, to give Dominic Calvert-Lewin a little bit of a helping hand up top, and it's fantastic to hear, because like you said, you had your various different, before, and where you're trying to get a connection with a football club. What was it sort of about Everton? Was it just that once Everton has touched you, nothing the same, or did Everton feel different to every other football club that you tried to sort of become an affiliation with?
It definitely felt like I felt a different connection, even though I don't, I'm, not over there living in, in Liverpool. Just the outreach that Everton does for they do for the community of Liverpool is just, I think, is amazing. It was just, I love what they do for the community, and it's that really kind of helped me decide kind of, oh yeah, this is I really feel a connection to this this club, about them supporting the community, and just everything they stand for, and it really touched me, and I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm a Toffee for life.
That's it, and that is amazing to hear. I think Everton are a very, very special football club in terms of what you've just said there, where we Everton do capture the hearts of millions across the world, because we are a very family-based club. It feels like one family, and that has been essential, certainly in this times. And I know, obviously, with yourself, I mean, we met up before that game at Goodison Park against Newcastle, which we will talk about later on in the podcast, and that's two Evertonians, one from Minnesota, I don't know however many thousands of miles from here, and myself from round the corner from the ground, meeting up and talking about Everton, and having that common sort of interest in Everton Football Club, and certainly in these times at the moment, where obviously we can't go the match, so a lot of us can't even see our friends and family. It's fantastic to see that sort of family sort of atmosphere, and through social media and through the likes of being able to do this podcast. I'm very, very lucky that I get to sit down and talk to a lot of different Evertonians across the world, because this for me feels like when we're sitting in the pub after the game, and we're talking about the result. Usually me and you have sat down and done game reviews before, and it literally very much feels like we're sitting down and we've just been in the game, and we're sitting and we're having a little bit of a rant about it, but we're not. We're 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, however many miles it is apart from each other. So we are a very, very family orientated club, and again, the community work is absolutely exceptional, and I think I do think it probably had a point in the affiliation that you have with the football club, but it's just such a heartwarming story to hear that obviously, like I said, you fell in love with the sport, and then it was sort of Everton that came to you through the medium of Adrian Heath, and obviously finding out about Adrian Heath and his past as an Everton player, and his love for Everton Football Club, and the fans' love for Adrian Heath as well. He's a legend in Evertonians' eyes, and it's fantastic to hear. So obviously you got into Everton. I think it's quite ironic that one of your first time you fell in love with football, you watched Romelu Lukaku, who of course is Everton's best striker in the Premier League era, and was flying about in the 2014 World Cup. He was priming it with for Everton. Obviously he just signed. I think he'd been on loan for a season. He was signing on a permanent deal. It was amazing time, and he was such an important player for Everton. So obviously, like you said, you got the affiliation with the football club, you supported it through your friends, and obviously finding out about Adrian Heath and that. What was the first sort of memory you had of Everton Football Club? When you look back and you think back to those times, what really stuck out as that initial sort of, this is, obviously you mentioned the community and stuff like that, but is there any one specific player, one specific kit, one match that really, really stood out for you at the start?
I mean, no, not not really looking back. I mean, it's basically it's all been a blur, and kind of, one that I, go back, recently, and when I had to kind of pinch myself to say, is it real, was, the first time Carlo Ancelotti was was managing. I had to pinch myself quite a few times during that game.
Yeah,
Just be like, is this real every time? The camera would pan to Ancelotti, and kind of, the moment where it's like, oh crap,
yeah.
he actually is, and how crazy is it and so that's kind of an important memory, is just have the thought of, Carlo Ancelotti being in charge is, I mean, mind blowing. Like, I'd be like, oh, you're dreaming if Carlo Ancelotti would, manage Everton.
Yeah.
No, I'm not dreaming. No, I'm
Yeah,
not.
absolutely, absolutely, and I still feel like that now. I still have to pinch myself sometimes. I still log onto social media and see Ancelotti tweeting about Everton, see James Rodriguez in Everton gear, and I still sort of sit here and think, is this real life? And I suppose with yourself, obviously, you become an Evertonian during some really really difficult times. I mean, you didn't even see the solid years of David Moyes, and how he solidified the club, and obviously the first Roberto Martinez season, which was very good. In the last sort of 5 or 6 years, in which you've obviously grown that affiliation with Everton Football Club, it hasn't been very, very good, let's be honest. We had the Ronald Koeman era, which was very bitter, very sour. It ended really, really poorly. Started okay with an initial decent season, which we ended up finishing in Europe, but really, really went down fast. Then obviously Sam Allardyce come in, and we all know that wasn't a very happy period for anybody at the football club in terms of the football, and obviously just the ambition that we were promised when Farhad Moshiri come into the football club under Roberto Martinez. We were promised this ambition of a world-class manager and world-class players and winning trophies and competing in the league and a new stadium, and it's amazing that 5-6 years down the line we're sitting here and that is becoming a reality now, with a world-class manager, with some world-class players, with a stadium on the horizon. But back then it very much seemed, certainly when Sam Allardyce come in, that sort of promise that Farhad Moshiri had made and that sort of vision was really fading away, because it wasn't like that whatsoever. Then obviously we had Marco Silva come in at the end of that season where Sam Allardyce, I think we finished 8th or something like that. His first season went well, but again was shaky, up and down. His second season was really poor, and now obviously we're here under Carlo Ancelotti. So I appreciate it was a very difficult time when you became an Evertonian, and when you sort of when obviously you got support in the football club, because it was towards the end of a difficult period in the club's history. Was there any specific player then that you you had an affiliation within that team that Ronald Koeman was managing? Because it was very difficult. You had Gylfi Sigurdsson playing in out of position. He'd just come into the football club. I think we signed about 4 or 5 number 10s for about £50 million. And I suppose the big question is, why did you stay a Blue, mate? Is it because once Everton touched you, that's it then? You're an Evertonian for life? Because it was a really, really tough period, wasn't it, at that point?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say probably like my favorite, Everton player, cliche, but it's probably Seamus Coleman. I mean, the first Everton jersey I ever
Yeah.
I ever got was a Coleman jersey, and you looking back on it, he's just, I mean, how we got him for 60 grand, and you know 10, almost, over a decade gone, since, and he's just, I mean, he is, he loves the club, loves the, community, wears his heart on his sleeve, and, knows what the fans want to achieve.
Absolutely. He's well. I know Everton legend. I know it gets battered about a lot, and I know there's a lot of, I speak to a lot of different Evertonians, and they're sort of careful with the word legend. But for me, Seamus Coleman is an Everton legend in my eyes. Like you mentioned, he come in £60,000. He struggled in his first season, and he's not only turned into an absolutely fantastic professional footballer. He's given us his entire career. He was absolutely unbelievable in that 2013-14, 2014-15 season. He was absolutely exceptional. He was the best right back in the country by a long stretch. I remember teams like Bayern Munich being linked with him. Manchester United were linked with him at one point as well. And he stayed very, very loyal to Everton Football Club. He stayed very, very loyal to the fans, very loyal to himself, and got his head down, and like I said, ultimately worked his way up to becoming the captain of the football club. And whilst I think Seamus Coleman, I don't want to say he's coming to the end of his Everton career, but it's probably starting to become apparent now that he won't have as much involvement as he has done in previous seasons, and that's natural. Look, he's at that age now where he's probably not going to have as much involvement as he has done previously, and obviously he's had some quite difficult injuries to overcome as well. But Seamus, for me, is an absolutely fantastic example of an Everton player that I think a lot of us sort of ultimately I suppose I don't want to say love, but ultimately appreciate an awful lot, because like I said, he's come in, he's given us his entire career. He's a top professional. He's also a fantastic role model for the club as well, and he's been part of some brilliant Everton sides. He was a massive part of that Merseyside derby win at Anfield a few weeks back. He was absolutely fantastic in that game when he was called upon. So no, I understand that completely, and I suppose of that team and of that era towards the end of Ronald Koeman's tenure at the football club, there was a lot of players that come and went. There was a lot of players that you often question whether they really cared. The likes of your Schneiderlins, come into the football club, and there was a lot of players that almost seemed like they were just there to pick up a wage, and they weren't really there to be part of this project that we were spoken about when Farhad Moshiri come in. Obviously, that's very different now. We seem to have a squad of players now, that fight for each other, that want to win, that want to be a part of this football club. It hasn't been perfect this season, don't get me wrong, but you can see that there's a plan, you can see that there's a future, you can see that there's a direction. Obviously, we'll mention the stadium in a little bit, and various other things, but no, I agree, it must have been very, very difficult. Obviously, I'd been through 15, 16 years of being an Evertonian by that point, so it just become, I'd known what it was like to love Everton players, and your likes of your Artetas and your Tim Cahles and your Duncan Fergusons and Lee Carsley, Nigel Martin, Joseph Yobo. But I feel like in that Ronald Koeman team, it probably was Leighton Baines and Seamus Coleman who were the only two at times that looked like they really were, were wanting to we're wanting to succeed. So, no, absolutely brilliant. Obviously, you mentioned there the affiliation with Minnesota United briefly, and Adrian Heath and Inchy being the manager of Minnesota United. Obviously, over in the MLS, we've done a couple of videos on the channel. If you watch the Mighty Blues, you'll have seen the couple of Minnesota videos that we've done so far on the channel. We're going to do another few in the next couple of weeks as well. Talk to us about Minnesota United then. What was it that brought you to Minnesota United? They're your local football club. So as soon as you sort of fell in love with football, was it right there the closest club to me? So I'll support them before you sort of look to support a club in the Premier League. And then what is it about Adrian Heath? Talk to us about Adrian Heath. Is he as good a manager as he was a player? Put it that way.
Pretty much. I kind of fell in love. It was kind of funny because I kind of, fell in love with soccer, and then I think it was this past week was. One of the days in this past week was on that day in 2015, MLS had granted a Minnesota and a club in MLS, and it was crazy. And at that time, I really didn't realize that there was a professional team, and in in Minnesota that, I mean, we were, down in the lower, but there's always been a big soccer, community in Minnesota through all the, the changes of, the names and, professional clubs. Um, so it was kind of that. And then I'm like, ooh, and then I was, kind of, working at a summer camp, and I had, one of my, coworkers. He's a United fan, and so we would always be like, you know, bantering with each other about, who's better, and who's got the better manager, and that. And then, with Minnesota, and Adrian Heath. And I would definitely say there are some things, as far as he kind of will tend to play players like out of position. Like, as of right now, I don't think we really. I mean, I think we have like one natural left-footed winger, but basically, but he plays best when he's on the right side, and we have like a surplus of right wingers.
That
And
reminds me of
so
Everton.
it's and so that, and also just like, it's kind of also his deal with substitutions, as far as, if like he doesn't really want to use subs, because he doesn't want to disrupt the flow of the game. Or it's like, if we're creating a lot of chances with the players on the field, eventually, depending on, you got to finish. But one of the things I think that Minnesota, that we haven't had since, I would have to say, maybe our first or second season in MLS, is a striker that is reliable, and can score goals. And so that's definitely something that I'm hoping that, the guy that reported to bringing in on loan can hopefully score a few goals.
Yeah, definitely, and it would be great to see. I think Minnesota finished fourth last season in the MLS league. I know it's very different over there, and that's something that I've been trying to gauge when we've been doing the different videos on Minnesota, as how football works over in the States, because it's very, very different to how football works over here, with the drafts and the salary caps and stuff like that. There's a lot of things in place over in the States, actually, that probably would work well over here, but just aren't in place. So yeah, no, absolutely. And like you mentioned there, Adrian Heath has still got a lot to learn as a manager. Obviously it's nice to be helped with the players that are needed. Obviously a goal scoring striker is absolutely essential. So in terms of the general feeling at Minnesota, obviously you've got the affiliation with Everton Football Club. There'll be a lot of Minnesota fans that haven't got an affiliation with Everton Football Club. Is the general consensus over at Minnesota that everybody's sort of happy with Adrian Heath as the manager, and there's a project there moving forward, or is it sort of a split between fans that are happy and maybe fans that aren't as happy?
I would definitely say there's definitely a split, because I would definitely say, when we initially came in, kind of, there was a 3-year plan. And so, like, our first 2 seasons, we played at where the University of Minnesota plays their American football games. And then we moved into Allianz Field, which I mean I still remember my first time going there and seeing the kind of seeing the stadium and just being in awe of that. And then that year we ended up making the playoffs and kind of feel like we've really kind of like we got first season was kind of like, okay, how can we do? Second season is like, okay, can we bolster bolster our attack, our third season first at Allianz, can we get a really good defense? And last season we kind of had to piggyback off that. And kind of our attack was still pretty good, but can we bring it up the next level? And I can't wait to see what the group of players do this season and cheer them on and sing Wonderwall again.
Definitely. Well, you mentioned Wonderwall. I was literally just about to move on to that. Let's get into some of the traditions that Minnesota United have. Obviously, I've followed them on Twitter now for quite a while. Obviously, ever since we got talking about it, you've sent me an awful lot of stuff. Obviously, I know we can't sing the songs, and we can't say the lyrics because this video will probably get shut down with copyright and stuff like that, or this podcast if you're listening. But they do. There is a lot of traditions over at Minnesota, and from what I've seen and from what I've watched, and I remember looking at images, you sent me images a couple of days ago, and I seen it on the Minnesota Twitter as well, of the first game, I believe, that was played at maybe the Allianz Field, or maybe it was one of the first games Minnesota played in the snow.
Yeah, that was the first home game where we played Atlanta United, ended up getting beat 5-1, and I was actually down on vacation in Mexico, so I was trying really hard to see if they had any like TV channels down there where I could watch the game, and I think unfortunately I wasn't able to watch it.
Nightmare.
So, and they said that was definitely an an interesting game. And then the crazy first game at Allianz Field was just, I mean, that was probably one of the best games that I've been to.
Well, you look at
for Minnesota.
I looked at the pictures, and obviously everybody's in the snow and it's freezing cold, and there's people there with no tops on, and it looked absolutely packed out. And I know whilst obviously we sit here and you yourself know it, and I spoke about it before, that football or soccer, if you're watching from the States, isn't the biggest sport over in America, and I understand that. I appreciate it. I've been over to America a couple of times. I've watched a baseball game in the Yankee Stadium, and it was absolutely packed to the hills. I've watched a basketball game in New York as well, and that was packed out to the hilts. So is it, as much as it might be the biggest sport, from what I've seen from those images and those pictures, there seemed like an awful lot of people that turned up to support Minnesota. Is it sort of a feeling of those people are turning up because they like the sport of football, or are they turning up because they want to support a local sort of side that are that are performing in a sport? Because there seemed like a lot of people there, or was that maybe just me from the photos? Where on those games at the Allianz Arena, is it packed out? Is it sold out? Is there a lot of sort of fans of Minnesota United that turn up and like the sport of football, I suppose?
Oh yeah, I think almost every single game the first season at Allianz Field was pretty much like sold out. And I know, depending on, and kind of and granted, probably because it's brand new and kind of that, but kind of interesting once you get I would assume once we're back in full capacity, it'll start being sold out because I just think you know you really love you love the game, and it's you know I remember I was like down to Mexico once when I was younger, and I think there was a kid from Portugal and or something, and I couldn't speak Portuguese, but it almost felt like we could like communicate through the
Yeah.
beautiful game, which I really love, and how it's international. You can just have just bring a have a ball, and bring it somewhere, and just set it down and start playing with it, and automatically people you know know what game it is, and kind of you can kind of communicate and have a conversation through you know playing it, even if you don't speak the same languages.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think again that's another absolutely fantastic story, and you're spot on. Football is a worldwide sport, and you're right. You don't need to be able to communicate verbally. You don't need to be able to speak the same languages as somebody. You can often just bring a football, put it down, and you could have 5 or 6 people who you've never met before, don't speak their language, don't know much about them, and you could have a game of football, and everybody's on the same wavelength. Everybody's on the same. Obviously everybody's playing the same game, and everybody knows and loves the game. So, you're spot on there, absolutely. And like I said, I can't wait until everything opens back up again. Hopefully be able to get over to Minnesota and watch a game live at the Allianz Field. I'll be sure to wrap up warm, because I know it's not very warm over in Minnesota at times. I thought it was cold here, but Gortz was telling me that, it gets into the minus 10s, 15s sometimes, and I don't think I could cope with that whatsoever. So I'm definitely looking forward to get over, and I'll definitely have to bring me big coat, that's for sure. But obviously, talking about travelling to watch a game of football, obviously last year, January 2020, you made the long trip over from America to Goodison Park to watch Carlo Ancelotti's Everton take on Newcastle United at Goodison Park. Still one of only 8 games, I think, that have been played in front of a full capacity Goodison Park, in which Carlo Ancelotti has managed Everton in. Again, like I mentioned, one of the final games before the suspension of football, and ultimately one of the final games that 40,000 Evertonians could go and watch. I know we've had a couple of games with a couple of thousand fans in there in December, but I think it was the Newcastle game, maybe another one after that, and then the Man United game, and then that was it. Then we haven't been at Goodison Park in full capacity since then. Hopefully it's not long before we're back there once again. But talk to us about that, mate. What was the decision? What made you decide, you know what? I'm going to travel all that way. I'm going to go and watch Everton Football Club. I'm going to go and visit Goodison Park. And how was that for you? How was getting into the city of Liverpool, seeing the fans on a match day, feeling that feeling? Obviously we met up in the fan zone before it, going into Goodison Park, watching Everton Football Club. I can imagine that to be quite an emotional time for yourself, because you've gone from watching on television and being so invested into this football club from a distance to now being there right in front of your eyes. I can imagine that to have been such a fantastic experience for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So it was kind of like kind of something that me and my dad kind of were planned, would that we would go over, and I think we did like I think we did 10 days, and went to kind of my thing was, oh yeah, go to thing on my priority was go to Liverpool and catch an Everton game. And kind of my dad's priority was like, okay, I want to spend like one night in Wales. And so we kind of did that, and that was fun, and just had an Airbnb right by, well, a 5-minute walk from Goodison, and caught the I still look back, and I'm like, I need to get, as soon as everything is back up, I need to get back over there and watch a game. That is that we win, because that was just I've said this before and I'll say it again. I haven't heard that many F bombs since my family took a vacation to Ireland, and we all know how Irish people love to swear, and just and I also thought it was kind of funny being a Minnesota being from Minnesota and being a Minnesota sports fan. That's kind of letting it slip is kind of is like something that happens to a lot of Minnesota sports teams. Is they're leading for like they're leading for most of the game, and then they just they just completely bottle it at the end and end up losing or draw. It's usually losing,
Yeah, that's typically what
but
it usually is with Everton as well, to be honest. We got lucky on that day.
yeah, and like you said, kind of, got to, meet up with you before the game, and talked to Everton, and gave you the Dark Cloud
Still up
scarf.
there.
So yep. So you still have something Minnesota, and then funny enough, um, you weren't actually the only YouTube football fan that I met over in the
Okay,
UK.
okay. Who else? Who else did you bump into?
I was I was either we were walking from me and my dad were walking from the uh museum. We were either walking from the England Museum to Buckingham Palace, where I think we were walking from the Buckingham Palace our um back to our Airbnb, and I look over and I see a guy who looks awfully a lot like Troops.
Did you bump into him?
And so I kind of, yeah, I did. He's like, oh, so I'm like, oh, and so I got a picture with, I got a, picture with Troops, and unfortunately, that's one of the things that I couldn't get with you, but hopefully, but next time, that's definitely something. So
Yeah.
and the atmosphere at Gooderson. Oh, I mean, and it's a lot, different compared to the US as far, like, oh, like learning over in England that, oh, you can only like, drink in the, hallway.
Yeah.
You can't bring your beer to your seat. They really don't like, they really don't like standing, but I mean, are they really going to stop, an entire stadium from, standing when, the players are walking out, or, when there's a big chance,
That's
or,
it.
kind of like that. And kind of different to the US where like we have the big supporter section, the Wonderwall, which is standing, and and we can uh bring our we can bring our alcoholic beverages to our to our seats with us, and
Yeah.
kind of everything. And it's definitely a different, but I it's like I love the atmosphere at both places, because they both have like I can understand why they have they set the rules why they do, because they don't want you they don't want you getting drunk at the state during the game, because you want to fully enjoy it. And so that's kind of why I think, yeah, like you say, you go, you have a beer, before the game, kind of, you go watch the game, and then you go back into the
Yeah,
pub after the game and have another
yeah.
one, so you can just, talk about it, which is something that I really like that. I really like that atmosphere, and to, I mean, I've said it countless, but to go back is, I've talked with my dad, and we're we're penciling in, depending on when everything goes back, coming over in January.
Brilliant.
So hopefully, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we'll
So
definitely meet up then, and we'll 100% get a picture. I still can't believe we didn't get a picture last time. We were just so involved in talking about the game and Everton, and it just seemed like,
mhm,
again, we were just sitting there chatting before the game. And you mentioned there,
mhm,
if there was one game that really, really does sort of summarise Everton Football Club to go and watch, I mean, Gort's travelled however many thousands of miles across the planet, come to Goodison Park, had the old match day atmosphere. It was a night game as well. I think it was at 8 o'clock kickoff under the lights at Goodison, and he watched an Everton game, and by that I don't just mean a game at Goodison involving Everton, I mean a proper Everton game, and that was that we were 2-0 up. It was arguably the best performance of the season for 89 minutes. We were absolutely brilliant. I remember Moise Keane scored his first goal for Everton. He was excellent on the night. We were just so comfortable, so solid, and then all of a sudden Newcastle United make two changes in the 89th minute. They bring on two centre-backs. I'm sitting there thinking, get in, what a game. Gortz will be made up. He's travelled all this way. We've been brilliant. We can go home. We can do the happy instant match reaction, etc., etc. And then literally within the space of 45 seconds, we go from 2-0 up to 2-2, and that's it. And I don't want to talk too much specifically on the match in itself, because I'm sure you could probably find the instant match reaction on the channel. I wasn't very happy, put it that way. I just remember as soon as the first goal went in, I knew we weren't getting anything out of that game. I knew it was a case of drawing it or losing it, because you just know when you concede with a minute to go and you're just one behind, it's only going to end up as a draw, and that's exactly what it was. And parcel of the reason as to why, when Gylfi Sigurdsson scored that penalty at Anfield a few weeks back, I still sat behind my couch and had a massive sigh of sort of, oh my god, this is going to be a long final 10 minutes, because I knew if Liverpool would have scored one, even though it had still been 2-1, that Newcastle game was just in the forefront of my mind, and has been every time we get a lead, really. I just keep thinking of that game. So listen, it wasn't the greatest result, it wasn't the greatest way to end the night, but it was Everton, put it that way. It wouldn't be an Everton for us to just turn up and win comfortably and have an easy game. It's Everton to throw it away in the last 25 seconds of it. But nevertheless, an unbelievable experience for yourself, for your dad as well. I'm looking forward to, hopefully, next time you come down and you come to Goodison Park, we can meet up again. We can have another little bit of a drink. We can laugh about it. We can talk about Minnesota. We can talk about everything, and hopefully get in the ground as a 40,000 capacity, because let's be honest, that's what we all want now. It's I know it's been tough this last year, and I know there's a lot more serious things going on in the world than football, and I know football, as Carlo Ancelotti quite rightly said, is the most important thing in the world out of the least important things. I think that quote from Carlo Ancelotti is absolutely spot on, to be honest with you. I know he didn't make it up. I know he said he heard it from his manager, but it's right. But I think we're all ready now to just get back to some normality, get back to Goodison Park, and I know Gortz is itching to make that long distance travelling again and get back to watch the Toffees, and hopefully this time watch Carlo Ancelotti's Toffees turn up and have a comfortable win. But then again, we haven't been very good at home recently either, so I wouldn't be holding my breath whatsoever. We will go on to talk about Carlo Ancelotti and Everton Football Club and the project, and I want to compare, when you first become an Evertonian, like I said, at the end of that Ronald Koeman era, where obviously we employed Sam Allardyce, and this isn't a dig at Sam Allardyce, but just in case, just a case of the project that we were sort of promised really seemed to just be fading away in front of us at that time, whereas now obviously everything's up and running. But before we get into that, obviously you're living over in the States. There's a time difference over in the States. I think it's maybe 5 hours, 6 hours different to what we are in Liverpool, and that is it 6?
It's usually 6. So.
And that comes with its own sort of, I don't want to say barriers, but it comes with its own added extra little bits of fun, doesn't it? Certainly on a match day. I know we've spoken a number of times, and I've give you a little message on Twitter after an 12 kickoff saying, "Oh, we were dreadful today, mate. I'm dead annoyed." And you message back saying, "How do you think I feel? I woke up at 5:30 and watched that." It's a very different type of experience, and I've always said this, and I give credit to every single fan of any football club, Evertonian or not, that supports a football club from a distance away. Certainly where there's a time difference, because there's a much bigger you've got to make ultimately a sacrifice, and that is sometimes getting up at ridiculous hours in the morning to watch Everton. Sometimes it's obviously we can play at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's bang in the middle of your day, so you've got to make that sacrifice to take the time out to watch Everton Football Club. So what is that like? I suppose I couldn't do it. Well, I could do it for Everton. If I lived in the States, I'd do it for Everton, but I'd find it extremely hard to wake up at 5-6 o'clock in the morning to watch an afternoon game, especially given the fact that we're not very good in the afternoon. So is that something that you've just become used to now, or is it still something that when that alarm goes off you think, oh, I could do with this being a later one?
No, I'm usually a morning person, so it really doesn't faze me, waking up for the early games. So it's kind of nice because I kind of I get to start. So, I love sometimes if Everton and Minnesota kind of play on the same day. I love that day because it's like I get to start my day watching one of my favorite team that I support, and then I end the day with my other with my local club that I support. And I would definitely say there are definitely times when it's been a struggle where I've almost been like I've had the an itch to be like, oh, there's the snooze button, I'm gonna go hit the snooze. But I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've done that a few times and probably missed the opening half hour. But most of the time I'm like, yep, I'm getting up and I'm watching the game. So
brilliant, and that is the dedication that obviously is absolutely fantastic to see within a football fan, is that dedication to wake up at ridiculous hours in the morning and to turn the telly on and to watch Everton, and especially being an Everton fan, I suppose it's all right if you're waking up at 5 in the morning and you're watching Manchester City roll somebody over 6-0, and that's a brilliant start to your day while you're eating your breakfast. But usually with Everton, it's the players haven't woken up either, and it's 12:30 over here and they're still hitting the snooze button, I think. So it can be very difficult to watch. I know myself, I've sat countless amount of times on the couch in the afternoon and thought this is absolutely shocking, these players aren't even awake. And then I always think back, it's probably about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning over in the States, and Gort's watching this, he must be thinking, I wish I hit that snooze button. But no, it's an amazing level of dedication that I absolutely I applaud you for, to be honest with you, mate, because I think it shows just how much Everton Football Club means to you, and that's such an unbelievable feeling as well. And obviously that's fantastic to see that Everton Football Club has that effect on fans across the world, where they will make those sacrifices and they will wake up at ridiculous hours in the morning to watch Everton. So I suppose then let's get into some talk on Everton this season. Carlo Ancelotti this season, of course, where we may finish. It's been a roller coaster, I think, so far, is fair to say. I think it's been a good season. I think Everton have achieved a lot of good things. Obviously, the derby win at Anfield was absolutely fantastic. You had the win at Spurs on the opening day. They're going 7 games, 7 wins at the start of the season, which was fantastic. And then, obviously, we've had some down points, losses to the likes of Fulham, Burnley at Goodison Park. We lost to Newcastle twice as well. What have you made of this season overall so far? And I suppose now that we're out, obviously, of both competitions, the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, it really is about focusing on a fight for Europe now, isn't it? And getting our heads down in the last 10 games of the season and making that a reality.
I would definitely say this is more of a, a transitional
Yeah.
season, kind of getting, getting players, that Carlo wants to get in, and and then definitely say, this summer will definitely be a big window, and I would, I'd, put my money on, some players leaving, and then bringing some players in, and I definitely think this is at a point where it's basically I think we got to go. I mean happy with if we got into like the Champions League, I would say, oh yeah, we'd overperform, but I think our goal now is Europe, or but Europe is kind of, I think that's our that main or is our main target. I would definitely probably say Europe, or close to Europe as far as league position is definitely, I think that's a big target.
Absolutely, mate. I completely agree, and like I said, it's been a difficult season. It's a mad season because obviously with what's going on in the world, and the league is so competitive at the moment that it seems like any team can go on a run of 2 or 3 good games and they're right up there within the race for Europe. And on the flip side, any team who are in the race for Europe can have a couple of really bad games on the bounce, and all of a sudden they're fighting in those mid-table areas. It's been a real difficult season. Only really Manchester City have been consistent. Let's be honest, they're the only team that have ran away with it and had that consistency this season. Everybody else has had games where they've lost and you saw the scratching your head thinking, how have they lost that? And games where they've won and you're scratching your head thinking, how have they won that? And that makes it obviously all the more difficult for Everton in terms of fighting and trying to finish in that European position. It would be a real shame. It would be a real shame. And I agree absolutely with what you said. It would be a real shame if you don't finish in Europe, by the way, is what I'm trying to say. And I agree with what you said about it being a transition season, and I think the expectations this season have changed massively throughout the course of it. I think we come into this season obviously off the back of finishing 12th. We had an awful sort of midfield in the summer, obviously before we brought in Alan, Decore and James. We really struggled towards the back end of last season when we returned from obviously the suspension of football during that period of 9 games before the end of the season. We massively struggled, so I think the expectation at the start of the season was, let's improve on the next season, get the new players better. Let's improve on the last season, get the new players bedded in, and sort of, just work to it and try and improve. And then obviously we went 7 wins out of 7 at the start of the season. We were in a fight for the Champions League at the beginning of March, sort of late February. So that expectation then went from, right, let's just improve and do better than we did last season, to actually we should be finishing in a European position. We should have been finishing in the Champions League. We definitely need to finish in a European competition, and I think if we don't finish in the Europa League, it would be a real shame ultimately, because again, we've had a lot of positives this season. I mean, we beat Liverpool for the first time at Anfield in 22 years. That's magnificent. That's absolutely magnificent. We've beaten Spurs for the first time away in over a decade. We've gotten over a lot of mental blocks that seem to have been in place at the football club for a long time. There was a mental block, about being in and around that top 2, top 3 teams. I remember under Marco Silva, we had an opportunity to go top of the league, and we only had to beat an Aston Villa team who hadn't won a game all season. This was about 4 or 5 games in, and we lost 2-0 away from home because we just didn't seem to have that mentality to be up there. Carlo Ancelotti has come in, and obviously he's got that mentality. He's a Premier League winning manager. He's a manager who's won Champions Leagues. He's won everything you can win in football. So he has instilled that winning mentality into these players, and that mentality of, yeah, you deserve to be in and around those top areas. You should be there. You should be fighting for those European places. again, it's been tough, and we've got a lot of tough games coming up. I think we need to sort our home form out massively if we're going to finish in the Europa League. But I do think a Europa League finish is minimum. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not the end of the world if we don't finish in the Europa League, and I don't think there'll be any calls for Carlo Ancelotti to be sacked or anything ridiculous like that. But it just would be disappointing given where we've been this season, and given before the Chelsea game, we had the opportunity to go into the top four if we beat Chelsea. Now, they're a very good team at the moment, and they're difficult to beat, and I understand that, and I'm not going to say I've got no issues with losing to Chelsea, because I have an issue with losing, but it's not the end of the world to lose to that Chelsea team. But to lose to Burnley the week after was shocking. To lose to games like Fulham at home is really poor. Newcastle twice is really poor. So it has been very, very up and down. I suppose, where do you think we will finish then? I know obviously we all sort of hope that it'll be in a European position. We all sort of hope that we'll be able to make that final push for Europe and finish in that European Europa League places. But can you see us doing that? Do you think we need to improve our home form if that's going to happen? Can you see us improving our home form between now and the end of the season? Where realistically would you expect Everton to finish up this season?
I would say top 10 is probably, I would say, I mean, like I said, I think, being in, Europe is, would be, really beneficial, but then that means that, this summer would be, a big summer of transfers, because then we'd have to be juggling, the league, the competitions plus Europe. And I think, you look at some and having your foot hold, and, in so many competitions to kind of be a deterrent. But, you look at City, and they're still all, they're in the competitions, and you just look, and definitely as a a transition, and you look at their bench, and you're like, I remember once I was watching the U.S. women's team, and there was a commentator that was like, they were like bringing on like Rose Lavelle, Sam Mewis, and they were bringing on, and one of the commentators was like, can you name a country or a club that can bring players like this off their bench? And I was like, I said to my dad, Manchester City.
Yeah.
And like five seconds later, the other commentator was like, Manchester City has that quality on their bench. And so hopefully, I would definitely say this is going to be I think we took a big step forward last, with the transfers that, we took. And you're probably not, mentioning, I would say probably one of the best, young transfers that players transferred last summer was, Ben Godfrey.
Absolutely.
I know I've said this again, but I bought myself a birthday present, and got my this season's Everton kit, Godfrey 22 on the back, because I like to say he's my British twin, because we share the exact same birthday. And I'm like, that guy he's a bowling. He's a wrecking ball. His pace. How we got him for what we paid for him, and how he says, like I said, Coleman is a true professional, and he is an unbelievable signing. Decore, I definitely think that we're going to miss Decore in the midfield with his energy.
Absolutely.
For the last part of the season, because that his knowing of where to be on the pitch at what time, and I mean, definitely, and the players that have really improved this season. You look at you know you know DCL.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's no pun intended. He's comes on leaps and bounds this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely
Just
agree. I completely agree. I think, like you said, there's been massive improvements. I mean, the summer transfer window was fantastic. You mentioned Ben Godfrey there. What a signing he's been. £20 million from Norwich, and he's one of the best young centre halves in the country at the moment. And again, we have made progress, and the progress is clear now, and that is obviously the new stadium is on the horizon, and obviously Carlo Ancelotti. This is the first time in a long time we've had a world class manager, and you can actually see that the project is working and it's going step by step. And I suppose, that must be, I mean, it's unbelievable for all of us Evertonians to see, but obviously, like we mentioned before, when you first started watching Everton and supporting Everton, it was Ronald Koeman. At the end of Ronald Koeman's era, Sam Allardyce come in, and the project seemed to have been thrown out the window for a little bit, and now obviously the new stadium on the horizon, Carlo Ancelotti at the helm of it, obviously the improvements we've made in the squad. I completely agree. It's a massive summer this transfer window, and we still need to make significant improvements, don't we, mate? Because if we're going to be a team in a European competition, as you quite rightly said, to manage 4 competitions, you need a much bigger and better squad than what we've currently got.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say this summer is. I would definitely say uh, uh, a right back, which I would definitely say, go after, Godfrey is one of his best mates, and Max Aarons. I've watched him. I've watched a few Norwich games this season on, you know, when I haven't, and he's looked really good. I think um, Davies really stepped up this year. I think like I said when I think it was we were doing the summer transfer review, and bringing in better players. You that kind of says the existing players, like, okay, yeah, these players are better than
Yeah.
you. Show me that that you can be better than them. And you look at Tom Davies, and I think when Alan was out, I mean, Davies was immense. And I still think that game over Derby win over Liverpool, that was, I mean, inject that into my veins, every single day, every single day of the year. And it just, and you look at afterwards, you look at what it meant to those players. It was, and they knew what it meant to the fans. And I remember then, I think it was at 11:30, and I'm not gonna lie, I cracked open a beer at kickoff, and it was kind of like, oh. And then waited a little bit, and went on and totally celebrated the win. I mean, definitely, it's been a great season, and we're only just we're sleeping giants.
Absolutely, mate. I agree, absolutely, completely. I think you're spot on. I think you've just summarised it absolutely perfectly there. Well, before we finish up then, mate, I want to say a massive thank you for coming on. Really do appreciate it. Obviously, Gortz will be on the channel loads more in the future. Get him on the podcast again as well. So if you're listening, if you've enjoyed, please do give us a good rating. That would be greatly appreciated. If you're watching as a YouTube video, please do drop the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. Before we finish up then, mate, mate, I want to know, I suppose I know this, I think I gauged it from your answer earlier, but maybe it's changed in the last sort of 6 months or so. Who would be your favourite Everton player of all time?
Ooh, I mean, that's a really hard one. I mean, you can't. I mean, I would probably say, uh, maybe somebody like a Seamus Coleman, or I can't believe I didn't think of this being American and being an Everton fan. Tim Howard.
Yeah, Tim Howard. What a player he was, and what a player not just for Everton but for the American national team as well. An absolutely fantastic goalkeeper, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think because he left Everton to go back to Colorado, and then I know he retired, and then I think he played a little bit last season for a second tier club that I think that he part owns or something. So I think he's still wonderful play this season, or finally hang up the gloves, but
he's a top player, wasn't he? An absolutely top player. Well, Gort, thank you very, very much for joining us today. I really, really, really do appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please do leave it a like. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. If you're new to listening on Spotify and iTunes and all of that good stuff, please do give us a good rating. That would mean a great deal to us. Well, before we go, mate, have you got anything to say to finish up on?
I know I forgot this in the last Minnesota video, but I put a comment down below. But we are doing a MLS fantasy league. So if any of you are into fantasy and want to dip your toes into MLS and get to know the league, we're gonna do a fantasy league, and I'm gonna send a winner a MLS scarf of MLS club scarf of their choice. So if you don't, if you want to, Atlanta United, or one of the new teams, all you got to do is win, and I'll send the winner a scarf of their choice.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Can't wait to get involved with all of that. And we'll have another Minnesota video up talking a little bit more about that in more detail next week as well. Look, massive thanks, Gort, for joining us. Really do appreciate it, mate. Massive thanks to everybody for watching this one. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the Mighty Blues if you haven't already as well. If you're listening on the podcast platforms, big thanks for listening. Please do give us a rating, and we'll be back with another episode in the coming weeks. But until then, massive thank you for watching. Really do appreciate it, and we'll see you soon on the Park End podcast. Cheers. Speak to you soon.